You're looking for a TV that actually fits into your life, something that won't make you stare at a menu just to get a decent picture, that sits comfortably in the room you have, and that feels like a solid investment instead of a collection of flashy specs you'll never use. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The big question most of us face before hitting add to cart is whether the unit will live up to everyday expectations without turning the living room into a tech obstacle course. When I started digging into the 55-inch Samsung QB55B, the first thing that popped up was a wave of hesitation that's common with any mid-range 4K set. People worry about the gap between the marketing hype, 4K UHD, vibrant colors, sleek design, and the actual experience of watching a family movie night or playing a fast-paced game after a long day. The risk of buying the wrong thing usually shows up in two places: picture performance that looks good in a showroom but falters in a bright living room, and a smart platform that feels clunky when you just want to fire up Netflix. I wanted to see if this model manages to keep those pitfalls at bay. First, let's talk about what a 55-inch screen really means in a typical home setting. In a medium-sized living room, that size tends to fill your field of view without demanding you sit glued to the wall. For most households, it's large enough to make movies feel cinematic, yet small enough that you don't need to rearrange furniture just to get a decent viewing angle. The QB55B lands right in that sweet spot, making it a practical choice for families with a mix of couch potato binge watchers and kids who love animated adventures. What separates a decent 4K TV from a great one is how it handles upscaling. Most of us still stream a lot of HD content, and the ability of the TV to lift that up to 4K without looking artificially sharpened matters. Samsung's processing, which is built into the QB55B, does a respectable job of pulling more detail out of lower resolution sources. In practice, you'll notice that a 1080p show looks clearer on this set than it would on a basic 4K panel with no upscaling engine. That's a real-world win for anyone who watches a mix of older series and newer 4K releases. Now, let's address the bright side of the picture department. The panel offers a standard UHD resolution of 3840x2160, which, on a 55-inch screen, gives you a pixel density that's sharp enough to keep text crisp and fine details in games noticeable. In a dimly lit room, the colors appear vivid, and the contrast is decent for a TV in this price tier. I tested it with a popular streaming service that offers HDR content, and while the HDR punch isn't on the level of premium models with full-array local dimming, it still adds a noticeable depth to highlights. If you're watching a nature documentary, the extra luminance helps the sky look more realistic without washing out the darker shadows. The flip side is that the panel's peak brightness isn't high enough to combat strong daylight coming through large windows. In a sunlit kitchen or a room with big picture windows, you may find the whites look a touch muted compared to a high-end TV. For most people, though, that's a trade-off you'll accept if you're saving a few $100s. It's a reminder that the QB55B is designed for typical living room lighting, not a dedicated home theater that's always dark. Smart TV functionality is often where the real cost of a TV shows up. Samsung's Tizen platform runs on this model, and it's one of the more polished ecosystems you'll find. The home screen is organized around the apps you actually use, and the remote includes a voice button that works with both Bixby and Google Assistant, so you can say play The Office and let the TV handle it. In everyday use, switching between Netflix, YouTube, and a game console feels snappy. The only hiccup is that the app library isn't as expansive as some competitors. You'll find the major streaming services, but niche apps occasionally take longer to load or aren't supported at all. If you rely heavily on a specific service that's missing, that could be a deal breaker. Connectivity is straightforward: 3 HDMI ports, a USB slot, and Ethernet. The HDMI ports support the basic 4K at 60 Hz signal, which is perfect for most consoles and streaming boxes. However, there's no HDMI 2.1, so if you're planning to push a next-gen console at 120 Hz or use advanced gaming features like variable refresh rate, you'll be limited. For a typical family that watches movies and plays games at 60 Hz, the ports are more than sufficient. Let's talk about who should actually consider the QB55B. If you're a household that wants a solid 4K experience without splurging on the flagship line, this TV hits the mark. It's especially good for families that watch a lot of mixed resolution content, appreciate a clean smart interface, and